Body count, man versus woman. What's your take on this concept?
I think people get hung up on like the number, right? Especially when they talk about women.
Yeah.
You'll
By
see
the
that-
way, men never admit your number. Women, I know you won't admit your number.
Yeah.
So just words of the wise.
Exactly.
You're not cool bragging about how many you've been with. That's
yeah,
it.
you're never
As you were saying, sir.
even if I ask a girl that I'm dating, like, how many guys have you been with? She's never going to give me the correct answer, because there's always
You're
going
my
to be
first.
there's always going to be a
Okay.
guy that doesn't count.
Yeah.
There's always going to be maybe there'll be a handful of drunk nights she actually doesn't actually remember. Like, there's always going to be that exception, right? So I'm never going to get the honest to God's answer out of her. It's the truth.
Allie just went somewhere. I don't know.
Right. So, okay, it's less about like the actual number per se, and it's more about the kinds of dudes she was with who've kind of left an imprint on her. Because the reason why guys get hung up about body count in general is because, okay, if I get into a relationship with this girl, typically, if she's had a lot more partners than a girl who's had less partners, the girl with more partners is probably going to be like not as pleasant to be in a relationship with. She might be a bit more entitled, maybe a bit more like bratty, maybe a bit more combative, just in general, than a girl who's had less partners, right? However, that is probably the case more often than not because she's been with a dude who was just better than you.
Yes.
She was with some dude who was like, you know, a celebrity of some kind, maybe a professional athlete, maybe who was like, she just can't get that imprint of him out of her brain.
I believe this terminology is called alpha widowed, right?
Bingo.
Yeah, so explain that a little bit if you would.
Well, an alpha widow is exactly the situation I just described. So she was with some dude in her life who was the best guy she has ever been with. He ticked all the boxes,
Yeah.
and then he let her go, and now she can't get over him. So she's always comparing, even if it's subconsciously, she's
Yeah.
always comparing every other guy she gets with to that dude.
The problem with that for women, and then we'll move up, we got 5 minutes. The problem with that for women is that dude, that Leonardo DiCaprio, that famous NBA player, that dude will bang out a 7 because he met her in the club and she had big titties that night. And now that chick, sorry for the graphic example, now that chick thinks that she deserves the Leonardo DiCaprio of the world or the Derek Jeter of the world because she got him one night. Again, just because, you got him, can you retain that man? So the obtain, retain thing kind of works both ways. I see plenty of girls in South Beach that's like, oh, I've been with that celebrity. I've been with that musician. I know that rapper. It's like, yeah, but you're still single out here in the club, baby.
Is that your
It's
man?
because he hit it and quit it and kept it moving.
Is that your man?
And just because the guy, there's a difference between short term and long term. There's a difference between, hey, you're worthy of sex, you're not worthy of a relationship. And that's how it works for some women out there. Let me get your last thoughts on this. We're talking body count. We're talking about the risks of promiscuity of women. I know that, modern women and body count and feminism, they teach them, do whatever you want your body, live free, do your thing. A lot of that, we were just having this conversation with Dennis Prager, very smart intellectual. A lot of that, he said, that was prompted by birth control, which was in the 1950s, which essentially liberated women's sexuality. Here's some stats for you. 90% of women between ages of 18 and 64 have used contraceptives at some point.
Never have I.
And nearly half of all U.S. pregnancies are unintended. Talk about getting hit and quit and these things like this happening. So in your opinion, how has birth control made women more loose, and how has modern feminism encouraged women to explore their sexuality and be more promiscuous?
Oh, wow. He said we only have 5 minutes left. No, birth control, just in general, it's not very good for women. And you could, turn 15 and you can start menstruating and your parents will put you on it just because they don't want you to get pregnant on what they would say is an accident. It's not really an accident. Women are just conditioned to believe a lie that sex without consequence exists. Even if you don't conceive a life, there's still some sort of psychological or intimate consequence that comes with that. It doesn't matter. And I've had girlfriends who, they were taking their birth control. They gained a lot of weight because that's what makes birth control ineffective is a rapid weight gain. Don't listen to these women. Like, they're like, I don't know why it just stopped working. Like, honey, you gained 60 pounds. Like, it's not the same dose. I had a girlfriend that got pregnant on accident or whatever, and it worked out for her, yeah, but that is because we just have this belief that sex without consequence exists. And if you're on birth control as a woman, you will choose a man whose major histamine complex matches yours more. So
Major what was that?
Your major histamine complex.
To do with
your immune system.
Immune systems.
We can smell your immune system. Women can smell
Is this pheromones?
Pheromones
or is it separate from that?
It's pheromones and it's genetics. Because if I want to smell a man who varies more genetically than me, because that's going to create an attraction. Yeah, I completely think that I'm married right now because I met my man and I wasn't on birth control and his scent just drove me wild.
I never used birth control.
Women got all sort of stuff
That's
going
crazy.
on in there.
I
You
never-
know
I mean-
about this?
Women will pick completely different men if they're on birth control or if they're off birth control.
Wow.
Right.
Totally
Birth
different men.
control
This has
make
been
me feel like this. I never
empirically
used birth
studied.
control
Never
in
been
my
on
life,
birth control.
ever in my life, so I don't
Damn.
know what she's talking about. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
so it'll
Wow.
change who you end up choosing. So some women
Wow.
start relationships on birth control. They get off. They're not attracted to the
What?
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a. I mean, that it can get so much more complex than
I
that.
never
But
used it.
I would say that I met my husband. I knew him for a long time. I started dating him. I was not on birth control. I think I'm married today, literally just because of the way that I enjoy that he smells. I think it's
my
something that's
God.
predetermined. There's nothing that I could
That's
do
why I
about
got a
it.
man.
I've never smelled a better man in my life. I think we're genetically compatible. And I guess back to the alpha widow thing, the problem with promiscuity, and we think we have this excuse with birth control. If you run into the best sex of your life and you can't lock it down, you don't know if you're going to get that again. I got it. I'm good. I'm good forever. Okay?
Okay.
And that's honestly what makes a marriage work. Sex is the glue that keeps it together. But if you're out here thought, and you can't secure it, you will be thinking about that guy when you marry the guy that you have to. Nobody's holding a gun to your head, but you want babies, right? You need money for babies. You're going to be thinking about that other guy. And if that's a heavy toll for a woman to carry. And our grandmothers were able to stay shut about it. The problem with modern women is they'll open their mouth, okay? They will let you know, like, oh, you know what, you're actually not the best I ever had. It's like, honey, your grandmother would never, do better. So
Talk to your grandma.
Yeah.
And you wonder people wonder why the divorce rate is so high.
Yeah.
You get together on birth control. She goes off birth control to have a kid with the guy. She has a kid with the guy, and she's like, I don't like this guy. Because her
control,
entire
her hormones
perception
are
of
balanced.
what's an attractive man totally changes, whether she's on birth control or off birth
Lord.
control.
Well,